Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to Global Moto Coventry. Right here in this exact building is what will be one of the most important buildings for the resurrection of BSA, because every single BSA that's been made and coming to UK shores will come right here to Global Moto in Coventry, and from here it will be distributed to all of the different dealerships that will be selling the bikes. And I'm going to do something today that I've wanted to do for a very, very long time, and that is recount and retell the story of BSA. And I'm going to go all the way back to the very beginning, 160 years ago. Over the next 2 days, I'm going to go to 3 different locations to trace back the roots of BSA and what happened to this glorious company. What better place to start than right here, with 2 BSA Gold Stars in front of me. This one is an extremely valuable 1959 original Gold Star. And this is a 2023 Gold Star. So we've got them next to each other, just so you can see how similar they are. There are so many different styling elements that are a really true nod to the original. So soak it in, have a look, and I have asked to double check, I'll have to be very careful, but I should be allowed to ride this 59 Gold Star for about a mile down the road. And you may wonder why I need to be a bit careful with the mileage. If you come here, Monica, you'll be able to see that there are just 16 miles on the clock on this. And just have a look at the dials. Smith's, made in England, with 16 miles. It's got one other thing I'll just point out here, and this is going to save me. This has been retrofitted with an electronic starter. So in theory, even I should be able to start this just by pushing this button. And I think that may be the saving grace, because if I was tasked with having to start that myself, I think I'd be here for about 40 minutes. So we're going to push this out of the dealership, go for a little 1 mile ride on this, and then I'm going to take a 2023 model and go for a 2-day road trip to tell the story of BSA. I need to lie down. That was one of the most intense rides I think I've ever done. So one of the guys from Global Moto came outside and he said, right, Freddie, slightly different to normal bike. This is what you do. Very simple. You have to move this lever slightly towards you. You then have to start pumping this lever until you start to feel some pressure on this foot lever to the right hand side. Once you start feeling the foot pressure, you just need to make sure that 2 of the levers are pointing down, and then after that you can push this button to make sure it starts. Oh, and one more thing. The rear brake isn't on the right hand side. The rear brake is on the left hand side. And on the right hand side is how you change gears, but instead of the way we're used to it, you have to tap up to change into first, and down to go second, down third, down fourth. So just remember all those things, you'll be fine. By the way, the ground's slightly icy, but good luck with it. And this bike's worth about £20,000. That was just, yes, I'm delighted I did it, but pleasurable? Probably too stressful to be pleasurable, but I've now added 2 miles to this bike. So this bike now has 18 miles or 18.6 miles on the clock. So I've done about 10% of the whole mileage, maybe 15% of the entire mileage of this bike. Right, let me give you a bit of background on this now that I've got that out the way. It rides, once it gets going, beautifully nicely, and I can tell where that power is, because when this came out in 1938, this was one of the most powerful bikes on the market. A little bit of a backstory. 1937, Wal Handley was riding around the Brooklands circuit, and he managed to do an average speed of the entire circuit of 107 miles per hour average, and that means that he was awarded the coveted Gold Star for that achievement. BSA clocked on to the amount of press coverage this got, and they thought, right, that's it, let's build a bike called the Gold Star in reference to that very feat of performance that Wal Handley achieved. The next year, 1938, the Gold Star came along. Unfortunately, World War II came along a year later, so only 500 of these were made over the period of about a year prior to World War II. World War II ended, and then these were back into production, and throughout the 50s, these, the Gold Stars, were one of the ultimate performance motorcycles, and they actually built a reputation not just for being brilliant on the road, but also for being brilliant off the road as well. And they actually sold in very good numbers. They had a good reputation all the way up until the end, 1963. That's a 25-year run. And still now, what are we looking at? 60 years after the last Gold Star was sold. These are one of the most desirable, most collectible models from the entire BSA range. Right, I can't do the whole road trip on this. I think I'd have a nervous breakdown. So I'm going to go and see if I can take one of the new BSAs and head off for a 2-day trip. I should say one other thing as well. I did ask how to stop it because I was awkwardly sitting on this. You have to stop it with a glove on because it's safer. Put your hand, Monica, if you come here, actually put your hand over this, apologies for my technical knowledge, air outlet, hand over that, cover it, and that's how you turn the bike off. So I did that, and about 2 seconds later, it turned off. I'm going to be so happy to get on a new one. It's, I can't even describe it. Welcome to Small Heath. This is just to the southeast of central Birmingham. And we found it right in front of us here. These are the original BSA buildings. To give you some idea on location, and in fact, just to take you back to the very beginning, 1861, in a hotel just a few miles from here, the decision was made to form an arms company. The company was formed and it was called BSA. Now, BSA needed to look for a big site in order to build their factories, so they settled on here, a 25-acre site. And back then in about 1861, this would all have been greenery here, just with this original factory behind me. But BSA built the factory on one condition, that Great Western Railway build a train station nearby. So Small Heath train station was opened in 1863, the exact same year that BSA finally finished production of their factory. And you may have noticed, BSA. But BSA hasn't been here for 60 years or so, 50 years at least. But as BSA splintered off, each of the individual companies, whether it's the guns, motorcycles and other parts, formed their own little companies. And while the motorcycle arm, of course, went bust, exactly the same logo, BSA Guns, is still here in the exact same building from 1863. Look at that, BSA proudly stamped on the side and the 3 rifles stacked up there. And it even says, in fact, 1861, not even 1863, but 61. So these buildings here, this has always been where they made the rifles here, and just behind it, the square block, 3 stories, is where they made the motorcycles. And while BSA started with rifles and arms, in 1878, the demand for arms, munitions had completely dropped off the face of the earth. And BSA were desperately looking for ways to make new revenue streams. And a man called Mr. Otto came in 1878, came into the BSA factory right here, went to the boardroom, and he showed them his invention, a bicycle. But not a bicycle as we know it, because the wheels were on either side. And he slapped his invention down on the desk and he said, have a look at this. And then to finish off his sales pitch, he ripped off his bicycle from the desk, put it onto the floor, jumped on and cycled it down the stairs and out of the factory. And from that very point, that sowed the seeds in BSA's mind. Road transportation. And that's where it was born. And from 1880, BSA came out with their first bicycle components. And being experienced in making guns and munitions, they were very well versed in making precision engineered parts, and they quickly built up a really good reputation with customers. Then for the next 20 years, from 1880 until about 1900, production toed and froed as demand dictated between bicycle components and munitions, until in 1903 BSA experimented with clipping a little 230cc motorbike engine onto one of their BSA frames, and that was the start of BSA Motorcycles. And then finally, 7 years after that, in 1910, the first ever BSA motorcycle was born from right here in this factory. 4 years after that, war broke out, and BSA had to gigantically up production of everything, of motorbikes, of arms. Everything here would have been heaving. This whole street would have been full of BSA factories going all the way down there and all the way along here. And then, of course, after the First World War, BSA were in a significantly better place, at least with regards to the number of factories, the number of skilled personnel they had on board. But a slightly sad thing is that out of all the factories, all that remains now is what we've seen. The initial building with BSA Guns there, and this square building here. That is all that remains. Everything else has been knocked down. And there have been a few attempted petitions to try and make these buildings have a listed status so they can always be protected. But so far they've failed. So there's nothing guaranteeing in years to come these buildings will ever be here. And it's such a huge shame to think that this was once the most important motorcycle factory on earth. There was nowhere more important in the whole world for motorbike manufacturing, research, development than right here. And now it's been overtaken with an industrial estate with many different things going on. You've got car modifying, you've got the skip right down at the end there. So it's really unsure what's actually going to happen here. And after that, of course, World War I ended. Right here, the BSA Gold Star would have been born 1938 in the inter-year periods. Either this building or one right next to it. The Gold Star that I rode earlier would have been made by hand right here. I'm just warming up. It's February and it's about 3 degrees outside, so stopping off for a coffee is very, very welcome at the moment. We've got about another 15 to 20 minutes or so to the next destination, the next part of the story. But to fill the gap between World War I and all the way up until the end of BSA, we've got the interwar period and then just after World War II. So BSA had started to do really well between World War I and World War II. They'd had a good selection of bikes, including the BSA Gold Star. World War II came around and BSA's efforts to help the British troops and others was gigantic. They produced 126,000 BSA motorcycles for the army, as well as a huge amount of arms, munitions, again, foldable bicycles for the paratroopers. So much was rated on the significance of BSA's contribution in both world wars that their contribution was considered unsurpassed from any other company in the UK. After the Second World War, BSA bought Triumph Motorcycles in 1951, and it was at this point that they became the largest motorcycle company on earth. And this stat still amazes me. One in four motorcycles sold worldwide was a BSA. I mean, it's just completely mind-blowing figures. If you think where we just were, the Small Heath factory there, they were just the epicenter for motorcycle greatness on a global scale. It was completely phenomenal. Due to the success, BSA came up with the perfectly obvious tagline, 1 in 4 is a BSA, to show off the fact that they had complete global dominance. I mean, it was used by everyone worldwide, from the Royal Mail to police services, whether you're in the UK or New Zealand. They were an absolute phenomenon. But with all that success, that expansion into different areas, somehow things started to go badly wrong. And where we're heading next, after I finish my coffee, is the final chapter for BSA. I haven't parked up for no reason. Welcome to Daytona Drive in the town of Meriden, 20 minutes away from the Small Heath plant. This is Daytona Drive, and this road here that we've just come on is Bonneville Way. And this isn't a funny coincidence. This is because this here, where we're standing, was the site of Triumph's Meriden factory. And this is the beginning of the end for BSA, because by 1970, despite all of the success in the past 2 to 3 decades, BSA were in an atrocious position with a result of all of the aggressive expansion and a number of hugely damaging mismanagement policies within the company. By 1971, they had posted a £3 million loss. So, to try and curb that loss, they had to restructure the company. BSA Small Heath plant stopped producing motorcycles and they just focused on components, and they moved all of the production to here, this exact site in Meriden. Continuing to 1971, around about midway through the year, they did one final last chance, desperate effort to save the business, and they released 13 new motorcycles from Triumph and BSA. That didn't work, and by the end of 1971, they were really on the verge of bankruptcy. They managed to splutter on for another 2 years until the inevitable happened. Right here, and also at the Small Heath plant, 1973, BSA, after 63 years in continuous production, they went bust. And there's a little memorial, but before I get to the memorial here, that is all that's left. Little side note, 1973, BSA was bust. Norton Villiers tried taking over Triumph, but the Triumph employees, right here, blockaded the entrance, and they had a round-the-clock blockade, so when people were back at home sleeping, other employees would come here to make sure there's a 24/7 manned blockade in protest for Norton Villiers taking over the company. They ended up, all of their hard work, winning, and they formed their own company, Triumph Motorcycles Meriden. That carried on for a further 10 years, all the way up until 1983, and finally, that failed as well. So right here, this plaque signals the end. In fact, Monica, if you come round here, this is not just the end, yes, of Triumph Motorcycles, but also really it signals the end of BSA as well. This is the site of the Triumph Motorcycle Factory Meriden. 41 years. And that is all that's left. The following year, when Triumph finally went out of business, it was all knocked down, 1984, and all that's left here, again, if this once great location for motorcycle production, is a housing estate. And that signifies, or that signals, the end of BSA, the end of Triumph, but really, the end of BSA's journey was 10 years before this. I need to get a move on. It is 4:30. It's about 2 degrees now, and I can feel the temperature dropping all the time. To get to the final location for this little road trip on BSA's history, I need to ride for an hour and a half into London, and I think it's going to be below freezing by the time I get there. So I'm going to put as many thermal layers on as I can now. I will leave you there, but in the morning I'll take you with me on the final little bit of ride to this last location. Good morning from Watford. We stayed in a hotel about a mile down the road, and we got in at about 7 p.m. It was minus to my hands. It took them 20 minutes to recover, it was so cold. The final point of our journey, Lloyd Cooper's Motorcycles here in Watford. It says here, the oldest motorcycle dealership in the UK. And this is the dealership that has the longest running association with BSA out of any dealership on earth. They started selling BSA, not motorbikes, but bicycles in 1900. And then in 1910, they started selling the first ever BSA motorbike. And they sold BSAs all the way up until the very end. And no other motorcycle dealership on earth has that claim with BSA. So we're going to go inside and have a look, because I'm hoping someone may have unearthed a few of the old pictures from what it used to be like. All the way from the very start up until the Ton-Up Boys who would meet at the Busy Bees Biker Cafe. Just down the road, the Ton-Up Boys trying to hit the magical 100 miles an hour. Brighton Beach, the fights between the mods and rockers. How many motorbikes did Lloyd Cooper supply for all of those unforgettable experiences? Should we go inside? Let's go.
hadn't seen one of them in the flesh before. And when I was into bikes a long time ago, was very popular.
I know.
B31 and B33.
Yeah.
Are they made in China now?
India.
India, is it?
Made in India,
Same
and
as the Enfield.
exactly, and the first shipment for customers is coming today, literally today. So it's the first, I think, in the whole world coming today, and they're the customers' orders. Yeah.
Right.
So it's amazing. We should be seeing loads of them around, which is fantastic.
Yes.
Do you think it's a true enough representation of the original?
It's very. Well, it's got the same sort of the timing. This is the same.
Yeah.
Or very similar.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it is more or less the same. I don't know if the old ones weren't watercooled.
It's still a single 650cc, and I think they use machines to make these exactly the same. So they scanned the originals, and you'll see loads of original things even on the side bits there and things like that. So
the rear swinging on.
Well, that has been eye-opening. Just been inside, had a fascinating tour of that place, but this is the reaction that BSAs have. I think we've met 3 different people now who've just been fascinated by seeing the reimagined Gold Star. Just chatting to that gentleman there, and he remembers all of the BSAs, the Gold Stars, and just looking in absolute fascination at this new model BSA. We were talking to Des Gregory, who started here at Lloyd Cooper's Motorcycles back in 1976, and he's just jointly the 4th owner of Lloyd Cooper's. His son now, Luke Gregory, he manages the entire operation, so it's been in the family in some form with the Gregorys, now with Luke Gregory, since 1976. I don't know if you can make it out, but there are 3 stories here to Lloyd Cooper's. They used to individually manage to get motorbikes up flights of stairs right up to the top, and we're just having a look where you can see the brochures. You can actually see where the side stands have been, a few oil marks and things like that. They would get them right up to the top floor. They must all have looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day. But they've got original New Hudson marketing posters and plaques from 1910. They've got the whole history of bikes just dotted around in the attic upstairs there. You can really see the history. They've got all of the invoices from 1910 onwards. You can see the names of the people they sold the bicycles and motorbikes to. It is just a treasure trove of information, of knowledge there. Fascinating place. Should we wrap it up there? What a 2-day period. Just being able to go back and trace BSA's history back to the very start. You see the faded glory of the Small Heath plant, and then moving on to Meriden, where all that's left is a plaque, and the people that you pass by sharing their memories of BSA and their thoughts on it coming back. And you get that funny mix of the sadness of seeing a once world-beating company, and often, just like the Small Heath plant, reduced pretty much to rubble. But now the fact that here in 2023, February the 9th, the first orders of customers' bike, coincidentally today. So today really does mark the day that we can see customers riding BSA motorbikes on the road. So it turns what has been a sad story up until a few years ago into a fantastically upbeat, uplifting story, a success story for a once globally renowned British brand that's finally back. What a day. I had to share this just before I wrap up the video because Des was sharing a few of his memories from 1976 onwards, because in the 70s you didn't need to have a license to be able to sell 250cc bikes, and these bikes could be seriously quick. So there are many stories of Des and the team coming outside selling a 250cc bike to a completely inexperienced rider and actually having to teach them how to do clutch control, how to change gears and how to ride a bike. So their brand new bike would be parked outside here with someone jumping on the bike for the first time, and they remember watching them just weaving around the road, not having any idea what to do. They remember someone smashing in to the shop opposite. They remember someone riding along the road here and scraping 18 cars down the road, every single one of them getting scraped as they were completely out of control, coming back into the shop and actually saying, gonna need that insurance form, please. Just an endless list of stories. I could go on and on, but let's wrap it up there. Outside the oldest motorcycle dealership in the UK, and that wraps up the history of BSA. Thank you so much everyone for coming along. I really hope you've enjoyed this mini adventure. We'll see you in the next one. Please do give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and any stories you've got about BSA, I would absolutely love to hear them, so please do share.